Intellectually engaging to think outside the lines with conversation about the nation that never leaves you blind. Take a listen and pay attention. Here is where you find the educational, sensational meeting of the minds. Yeah, it's the meeting of the minds. Meeting of the minds.
Thank you for watching another episode of Meeting of the Minds. We have a very interesting topic, not only interesting topic, but it's going in a very interesting direction. We have the director of the show on the show, which is Charles Wright. He is the director of Meeting of the Minds, and usually he's behind the scenes. But it's ironic. I had a major hard time finding people to discuss. The topic that we're discussing is Me Too. And so I had an actually difficult time finding people that were willing to talk about it. Like, they're willing to talk about it on Facebook. Like, they're willing to be some Facebook gangsters about it. But then when it's time to talk about it on camera, they were shying away. And we got to talking, and we're like, okay, this is really good. So we grabbed a intern. So we have an intern in the back running the camera. And so we also have our my brain manager, Kai, with us. Lock, Kai, do or die. That's not her name, so I always have a trouble saying it. I'm like, it's Kai. Okay, it's Kai. And she's the person that, you know, makes all the loose ends not so loose with Meeting of the Minds. And so she's on. But then we also have my girlfriend, Kiara. We go back to working together at a nonprofit. And now she actually is over at Six Square. And so there was a time Meeting of the Minds was in transition, and she opened up the Six Square house. It's a building. It's actually an art. It's also
It serves as an art gallery.
Art gallery as well. And they opened the doors over there for us to be able to be there while we were in transition. And then from there, we launched to the TV station. And so thank you so much for giving us a place to have Meeting of the Minds. And while we were there, we got to co-collaborate on the mural things. You were so passionate about getting the mural that you saw got painted over on Chacon and 12th Street. She was so passionate about it, and we were having Meeting of the Minds there at the same time. So we were like, why not have the discussion there? And it was amazing. So many people came, and it was just really phenomenal. So this is someone's face that you should remember when you see that mural. A huge part of making that happen to get it repainted by the original artist as well. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're here in the mix with us as well. Yes. And so we have my martial arts teacher. He teaches African and Middle Eastern martial arts. He has created a group, well, is the president and I believe creator of, it's called Hama.
It's a historical African martial arts association.
Thank you for filling that in. And so, can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so basically we research and resurrect dying or dead martial arts that were practiced in ancient and medieval times. We focus on various parts of Africa and in the Middle East. There's a lot of crossover between the cultures. So, yeah.
And I picked him to come on the show because he's very sensitive to. I needed a sensitive figure on the show that was a male presence, you know, that he's very intuitive as to, you know, we needed somebody who could do that. Just trust me on that. So you might think that you know where this conversation is going, but you don't. And the minute that you think that you know, you're going to be surprised. It should take a turn. It's so the Me Too conversation, right? The Me Too, okay, let me preface one more thing before we start. We have to say this. This is a very difficult conversation, and any one of us can end up saying something that might offend someone out there. But I want you to keep these things in mind. Maybe we didn't get to elaborate, so you're only getting like a corner shot of what we meant to say, or maybe we don't have the knowledge or information yet to improve on that thought, and it's coming. We're learning from one another. I just ask that you give us the freedom to be free to share these thoughts and to learn from one another, and to know that, you know, sometimes we might say things wrong, and we might say it the wrong way, or we're trying things on for size, or we think one way now and may think about it later. We just ask that you be patient with our humanity and forgiving. And sometimes we don't know where we're standing. This topic we're going to be grappling at so much, and it's literally such a controversial topic that like no one wants to be on camera touching it. So the people that are here right now are some brave souls that are have a lot of courage. So yeah, I had to preface that. So now let us really for real again. The Me Too movement. Geez, I don't even know how we start with it. So what? Yeah, let's just jump. What are your thoughts around the Me Too movement? Like,
Would say that I'm on the fence about it. I was molested as a child, and then I was raped in college. And it was weird to me just because I really dealt with it in college and had to go to therapy, surgery, all of that. So I wasn't really vocal about it. I mean, yeah, I wasn't too vocal about it. But I definitely blamed myself for that. And I was mad at myself for not being vocal about it. And I think just in dealing with therapy and everything, it made me encourage other people to be more vocal and to start speaking on it. However, with the Me Too movement, I've really been pretty silent because I am on the fence about it. I feel that it has been a little sensationalized to a certain extent. And I feel that it may be for the people who did not speak up, so, and who did not find their voice before. And so I definitely have recently started speaking out about my rape. So for me, I didn't have to say me too. It wasn't a necessary like, hey, me too type thing for me. So I just I felt like that platform was for other people. And if it helped them find their voice, then great. But I definitely do have mixed feelings on how it's in the media and just things like that.
okay, what is quickly like your? What is your?
Why do you always say quickly to
Oh,
me?
I love it. I love my guy. Because I guess the initial breakouts, I know that you are in depth, and so I guess that right now I'm just going for the quick responses. But
What do I think about the movie?
yeah,
Okay. Me too. I was molested as a child. I was raped in high school. I was raped in college. I was raped in my 20s. And it's something that you learn over time as a survivor, whether or not you can be vocal about it. And in that regard, whether or not you can affect change with your coming forward. Because sometimes coming forward is for catharsis, and other times it may be for vengeance. And I think the whole movement is for those of us who may be on the fence. I think the whole movement is triggering in another way because, again, if it's sensationalized, then at some point it loses its credibility as a movement. But then for those people who are still struggling with finding their voice, I don't believe that at any point in time I ever sought validation from someone knowing what happened to me, but rather it was a matter of healing. And that is the most important thing. And the healing most often takes place in silence. So,
well, it's actually interesting that you say that. The healing happens possibly in silence, right? So what I find interesting, the fact that y'all are able to talk about it lets me know that y'all are healed. Because when you're not healed, you can't talk about it. Like, you can't talk about it. You don't want people to know about it. It's when you're healed that you're able to open up and say, you know what, I can freely, talk about it. What do you think?
I don't know. I think I probably disagree slightly. I don't know if I healed necessarily. I know I went to therapy, But I don't know. I think that I don't necessarily, I can't talk about the details of it too much. I don't, yeah, I'm not comfortable really just sharing it with people a lot of times. But I think that comes from me just, I don't want anyone to kind of take pity on me and I don't, yeah, I don't really like that. But I know I dealt with it a lot in college, and it definitely impacted just how I was as a person. I didn't tell many people about it, but I think I was just young and didn't know how to handle it. And so with me, I went to judicial affairs at Baylor, and they essentially blamed me for it happening. And so, yeah, that was a little hard. And then when even involving my parents, my mom almost pretty essentially said that it was my fault that it happened. And so I don't know if it's necessarily healing. I just know that I don't want it to happen to anybody else. And so for me, I didn't know the person at all. I was moving into my apartment like by myself, and I was supposed to have some movers and they bailed. And so I was moving everything by myself. And this guy walked by and was like, hey, I had my couch left and I had my bed, and he offered to help me. I had to put my bed together. He offered to do that. But at that point, like I had been moving things by myself for like 12 hours that day. So I just ended up passing out. Like after I put my bed together and my sheets up, I guess I didn't realize that he was still there, and I passed out on my bed, and that's how it happened with me. But it was just from people who knew me. They said, "Oh, well, you're too nice. You'll talk to strangers. And then yeah. So then in college, I was a sophomore. I was partying. I was single. I didn't really date like that, but Baylor was a dry school, dry county, so you can drink or anything. And so when I went to judicial affairs, they essentially went on my Facebook and said, "Oh, well, we saw you had some pictures with some cups. So we see you're a party girl." Then they mentioned that this was the largest black class that Baylor had taken. This was the same year that Robert Griffin came, Brittany Griner came. So it was kind of like, we're getting all of this good attention for black people. Do you want to be the person who brought that, who impacted that, pretty much. And so I didn't know how to handle it. And at that time, actually, I was a junior because I had a year and a half until I graduated. And so Baylor was expensive. So I was just trying to finish. So I didn't realize that they almost were, I guess, giving me shush money because I had to get like vaginal surgery from like the tears and everything. I also had to get tested for 6 months afterwards because he had just gotten out of jail, and they weren't sure of his status. And I was going to be kicked out of my class, all of my classes, because I wasn't sleeping at night, so I just stopped going to class. So Baylor agreed to pay for all of my therapy, and they paid for my surgery, and they paid for me to go an extra semester. So for me, I'm from the hood. I'm like, I'm just trying to finish. So I wasn't thinking about this is almost them admitting some guilt. Instead, it was just like, let me finish, But yeah, so it definitely impacted maybe me sharing my story, but I knew I just didn't want that to happen to anybody else. So it wasn't necessarily a me too, like, let me share this with you type thing, but I would say that it almost made me more on alert, and I could almost recognize it in other women, and it just really bothered me and how common it was. And so that's why I say I'm on the fence as far as the sensationalism, because it's like, how is it sensationalized, or is it really happening at this rate? And I think maybe I'm not sure if I want to think that way. So yeah, that's why.
I am so thankful that you're here to speak on that, because that is the epitome of what I think Me Too is. Like, it's saying, yeah, that happened to me too, but the fact that you are saying, it's like saying, all these people that have been silenced or kept their story to themselves or been paid off or or you don't want to bring a bad light. It's saying, no, me too, right? These are secrets that have gone on for so long and they're quiet. And that takes courage, Kiara. And I'm sure there's so many women out there. So this Me Too movement has caused women, like we're in the salon, we're at TNL, shout out to Tiffany Nicole. We're at TNL salon and everyone's like, me too, me too, me too, telling their stories. And so I'm not going to ask you guys what your thoughts are in that aspect, in that vein of it. I'm going to ask you what you think about the Me Too movement. But since it's a woman movement, that part is kind of clear. But when we are in the salon, you have women giving their stories. And that's another thing. Like, it's really strange to be, me and another girlfriend were talking about, it's strange to be the one who can't identify, like, I've never been molested. I've never been raped, right? And how rarity it is. Like, you'll be in a group of like 10 women and you're like, I can't identify. But then recently we had something happen where now, so the Me Too movement is bleeding into something else. We have, these like, I've been raped by a celebrity. I've been raped by so-and-so. It was, I was maybe slipped a roofie, or I was slipped, something that made me sleep and I was raped, but now we're bleeding into something else a little bit. And this is where I'm going to, ask you guys a little bit about your thoughts on the Me Too movement. We're slipping into something else where it's like that they bring in people like Russell Simmons, Have y'all heard the Russell Simmons one? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we'll touch on that. First, let me go to you guys. The Me Too movement is kind of moving in a different direction. So how do you see the Me Too movement? Define the Me Too movement through your eyes.
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Well, first, I'd like to extend my respect to you guys for sharing your story and just having the spirit to like weather that. I know that as a man, there is male privilege. Like, as a man, I have certain privileges, and part of that is also growing up in a culture that fosters, like, it's a rape culture. We from my perspective, I know that Cosby has been in the all of his actions were coming out to light about using drugs to get women into positions where he could take advantage of them. And I remember as a kid how common, not just like amongst friends, but how common that was, like in media, like that kind of activity was lionized in movies, in television. And of course, it was lionized amongst men. Like, who didn't like Revenge of the Nerds? And this is a perfect example of a guy taking advantage of. This is the hero of the story, and he's taking advantage of the cheerleader girl. He's getting his revenge, but he's violating her. And these were the stories and the movies and the things that were like acceptable. Mm-hmm. So like, when I have no love for Bill Cosby for other reasons. But when the focus is placed on him and his actions, but we don't look at the culture that he came from and the culture that he was a part of, and every other media person and man has been a part of, then I see a problem with that.
That's really good stuff. There's so much meat there that we have to touch on, that we have to go back into. Charles, what do you think of the Me Too movement? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's good. I think the sentiment of the Me Too movement is good. Anytime anybody's being victimized or being taken advantage of, they should speak out. I'm not a big fan of anything becoming a hashtag. Like, I always tell people, if the cops kill me, I don't want my name to be hashtagged on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Because then I just become something. I'm a person. And each one of those people that put that hashtag up, that's a person. Everybody has a story. And I'm of the mind that people are just shitty. Mm-hmm. And we're shitty to each other for no reason. Mm-hmm. And that's across the board. It's not a gender thing. Mm-hmm. That's just a human thing. So my problem with the Me Too movement is the way we relate to each other as people is complex and is varied. And just because you put that hashtag doesn't necessarily mean you're a victim. You think you were victimized, but some people they're in what I consider to be a transactional relationship. Because there's plenty of women who Harvey Weinstein is a rapist. He raped women. Bill Cosby is a rapist. He raped women. There are also women who are willing to sleep with Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby in a transactional way because they thought that man could do something for them, and when he didn't, they got mad, and then they jumped in and tried to be the same as a victim. You're not a victim. You got taken advantage of by a shitty person, but what he did to you specifically was not rape. It's not a crime.
But can I ask this?
Yeah.
Building on the whole idea of something being transactional, consent is a funny thing. And so there are times even still where transactionally, sometimes you're trying to buy your way out of a bad situation. It's not necessarily that it's something that you want to do, but rather you trade it for your own safety.
Okay, so that's
If that makes any sense.
Yes,
No,
it does.
Because there are some things
So
that are
there's
far worse
so many.
than rape.
There's too many things that are coming out that need to be addressed. This one, throughout this whole Me Too movement, I have heard story after story of people that were afraid for their life, and they did things so it was better than getting killed and raped. So let me participate till this is over. Put a bookmark in that. We got to get to that. We're gonna rewind all the way back to right here, where he was talking about cultural. So David Chappelle in the second episode, he just dropped a new comedy, and then there's two of them, right? And on the second one, he keeps mentioning something. He keeps saying that, this is a great thing that's happening. This is a great movement that's happening, but we need to get there together. Like it can't be. He kept saying it can't be attack kind of thing. And what does he mean by that? Like I kept thinking about what does he mean by that? And I kept reflecting on what he was talking about, that we have to get to this point together. And I kept reflecting on that, and I came to where Damon is at. He's almost at the root of stuff, right? So him and I actually were watching Saharan desert stuff. He's really into a people that are a tribal people, and their name can you fill them in a little bit?
The Tuareg. Okay. And just for the record, I don't think that was the group in the video.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it was a tribe from that area, maybe that region of somewhere in the Sahara. And so their custom is basically that the groom goes looking for the wife in the tents and stuff, and he finds her. And when he finds the bride, he brings her back to the ceremony, but she has to go kicking and screaming. She has to put up a fight. And the more of a fight you put off, the more pure you are. Okay? And so, and then he brings her, and so this is their custom, which is, really crazy, right? But we're bringing this up because he's right. There was a time in media that rapey things were coming from let's say, even, I don't want to say caveman mentality because not so much, but a way that so we also, a lot of us read the Ansari article, right? And there's a lot of questions. We all had mixed feelings about how that transaction went. And so I just finished saying that I had never been molested, I had never been raped. But once I read the Ansari article, I was like, okay, well, I know what that's about, right? This severe full pressure, like too much pressure, right? But then we have to sit back and say to ourselves, I'm coming from a culture, especially as a Middle Eastern woman, that you're not supposed to, you're supposed to put up a fight. You're supposed to not be so sure about it. That's innate. So then I can't even figure out, am I taught to not enjoy it in the beginning? is that real? Like literally, you have to think of these things. Like, is it real that maybe you're just taught that the woman is not supposed to want to, you know? Because there is a feeling that you want to, but you don't want to look like a hoe. And so I come from a time where the girl is supposed to go, no, 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 and he's supposed to put the full court press on, and that's just a transaction. Like if you're into it too soon, well. Yeah, so the whole transaction consists of her being like, no, I don't think we should, I don't think so. And then him being like, come on, girl, come on, right? So when does the line happen where, if that's where guys are coming from at a certain, where she's gonna say no, and you just gotta kind of keep like, until she loosens up a bit, to happening where it's like, I really don't want to do this. Like maybe I don't want to do this, but you're like pressuring me, and now like I don't want you to think I don't like you, and maybe I'm a prude, maybe I'm right. Like, shoot, this is the tangled web we weave. So I've said a lot. I don't even know if it was coherent, but hey,
yeah, it was to me, and it made me think just about just our culture, and with, I don't know, with Black women, you sometimes get, we're already angry Black bitches most times. So it's, if we're not compliant, then it's almost like she's stuck up, or, she doesn't, like, that's why you'll never have anybody. Like, it's almost like that at times. But then also I would say even with the media, because it seems like you're talking about it like it's past tense, or that used to be the culture,
no.
as far as like rapey culture.
It's changing maybe.
But is it getting any better though? Because now it makes me think, when you discuss like transactional sex, I get that. But then what does it mean if you consent, and then this person takes off the condom or something, and you don't know? Do you consider that rape?
Yeah,
And then you talk about media, and then you talk about the friend zone with men. Does that even exist? If a man says that he got friend zoned, that pretty much meant you were interested in this girl, and you're in the friend zone now, almost as if you can get out. So does that mean that eventually, she'll come around, somebody else will break her heart, and I'll get out the friend zone, and I'll be there to pick her up, when she's down, or when someone else lets her down, or whatever. So it's like, almost like, is that culture even gone, or is it almost redesigning itself, to look something a little bit more, I don't know, covert?
Well, I'll say the whole friend zone thing, and you have to excuse me, it's for a bunch of bitches. There's a bunch of bitch ass dudes that talk about that friend zone shit.
I agree.
Because I've never been one. I've never been the type of person to not say what I'm going to say to you. So if I like you like that, I'm just going to tell you. Like the girlfriend I have now, we've been together for 10 years. The first date, I knew, and I was like, I told her everything. The first date. Everything about me, my whole history, the good, the bad, the ugly, about my parents, about all my weird shit that I have in my head. You put it out there, and if that person is accepting of it, then that's what you do. If you sitting there complaining about you being a friend zone, you're just a bitch. Like, you gotta man up. Like, if you like her, tell her you like her. If you don't feel like that, because I don't have a lot of female friends. I never have. The girls that I have as female friends was because I've known them for a long period of time, and I've gotten to because if I can't have a conversation with you, I'm not gonna be your friend. I can't. It's just not part of my makeup. So, like that, I hate. I hate hearing that term. I especially hate hearing it from dudes. And as far as the transactional thing, yeah, if somebody reneges on the transaction, like, we know what this is. Like, there's been plenty. I'm gonna put it out there. A majority of the women that I've been with we've never been in a relationship, and that was never the intention. And they knew that going into it. And anybody that came to me and said, "Well, no, I didn't," because I will tell you, Straight up. Now, I've never been in a position where I would take advantage of somebody like that. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I know plenty about sexual harassment. I used to see it all the time. In fact, one of my best friends, she got sexually harassed by somebody that we both knew, that we both worked with. And I was one of the few people, like, she was lucky that I was her sergeant and the guy who was in charge of our shop was a good dude. Because when she came to him, most guys, or most of those people, when a female Marine, because Marine is 95% male, they're going to try to convince her not to go to the command or not to go, because they don't want to deal with it. It's not even that they don't believe her. It's not that they necessarily value that guy more than they value that female. They just don't want it because it's a lot to go through. You have to sit on boards. You have to go talk to a lot of people. It's a lot of legal shit involved with it. And he was like, look, if this is what happened, we're going to back you. So
I'm going to backtrack a little bit on some of the stuff that I think you sprinkled some of it in there too. Actually, maybe taking a turn. We'll see. Because this is really crazy. While you're talking, my wheels are turning and I'm like really tripping out. I am really big on truth, like no matter how embarrassing or whatever, like I really want the truth of a matter to come out and so forth. And so it's some of the things that I might say might even seem kind of contradictory because like in one vein, you'll be like, man, you're putting too much pressure on, right? Like no, and it's not okay. Like, how can I even explain this? Because, like, let's say you really like the guy, really like, and they're going, like, you're used to going 30 miles per hour, and they're already at 150, and you don't even know what to do with that. It's too much, And you're like, holy crap, like, this isn't comfortable, this is weird, and it's a lot to process. There's that. But then there's this whole other thing, and I'm serious because I want us to figure this thing out. And the best way I can remember is because Game of Thrones, he wears Game of Thrones. There's this Game of Thrones, right? And there's this scene where, I always call him the wrong name.
Khal Drogo.
Oh yeah, Khal Drogo.
And Khaleesi, right? It's a rapey scene, right? But that's a hot rapey scene. Like you're like, see what I'm saying? No. There's plenty of people who get like there is something to that, like that whole get over here, girl, pull of the hair. I'm gonna take you right now. Okay, there's something very erotic to this as well. Okay, Kai, go ahead, please.
Because I am a Scorpio.
Here we go.
Makes sense.
When we, as children, we learn to behave in ways that are presented to us, that are modeled for us. Sexuality is no different. For young adults, we learn either from loving expressions. We may have parents who are very affectionate with one another, and so we learn to navigate relationships with an air of loving adoration, gentle touches, and so forth. There are other people who do not have that same model. There are some people who learn about sex through, while I was growing up, we didn't have access to video, but we had Playboys and Hustlers and all of these magazines that my grandfather would hide in a stump out in the pasture. And so when the cousins would take us out in the truck to the pasture, they would leave us in the bed of the truck, and the boys would get out and walk over to this stump. We didn't know what was in the stump. We were too little to get out of the back of the truck. And here are all these boys looking at all of these women in various positions, in staged positions. As you get older and have more accessibility to, pornographic video and other things, sometimes the only experience a person has is with this fantasy world. And they start to think that this is how I'm supposed to touch a woman. This is how I'm supposed to touch a man. And it sometimes can be very, very staged and violent. And men and women alike are often misled into dancing in such a way that will only cause that kind of violent recreation. I think that it's important for us to, and why it is probably one of the reasons why we sit on the fence in this way, is because we can identify with both sides.
Right.
I can identify with a man who is in a situation where he feels like, no means yes, because that's all that he's been taught. I grew up in a family full of boys, and I know the conversations that young boys have, that young men have, that some older men have. I've kept my hair short enough to sit in barbershops long enough to know the conversations that go on. It is not malicious intent that people will sometimes violate another person, but because they are not healthy and have not learned a respectful and responsible way of expressing themselves without completely disregarding another person's wants and or needs, or they cannot mind read because they don't ask questions, and they're not truthful and honest about what they want from that other person and what they are willing to give.
I think that just looking at history, and when you were talking about loving interactions and sex and violence kind of coming together, and when you were talking, I was thinking about like animals and how they mate, and how seeing them mate, it is kind of scary. Like lions going at it is like it's kind of scary. It's very very fierce, and you can't tell if they're fighting or what. It's very very violent. And then so I'm thinking about us as humans being able to change our nature, being able to evolve and elevate ourselves. How it's been I think that we've started off more like the animals and developing now into a point where, just think like we're just now getting to say that women should have the same rights as men. So like, why would we expect, sexually people to be very, generous and kind to each other? We're just now getting the idea of civil rights. Like just because this person believes differently than me or sees the world differently than me, then they're entitled to the same amount of life, rights, and liberty as I am. So I think that as a species, hopefully we are having these conversations. We're at a point where we're realizing that our nature and the cultures that were developed because of our nature, we don't have to be chained to them. We can restructure them. So that's kind of what just a little bit what I was seeing when you were saying that, because we were coming from a place where you took a woman, even in like scripture where they mention the punishment for rape. The punishment for a man raping a woman according to the Torah was, well, he had to marry her. If a woman was raped was raped in a field, she would be considered innocent, because the understanding was that she was out in the field, out in the wilderness, no one heard her scream. But if a woman was caught and raped in the city, within the city, she would be considered guilty, and her punishment was death. And it's like, that's kind of like the culture, the mentality that we're coming from. And the idea is that hopefully we're evolving to the point where it's like, no, we don't have to.
That's really good.
Well, it's what we value, though. So that's the problem, is that we come from a culture, a societal thing, where women's value was to create more men. Mm-hmm. So that was really what we come from. It wasn't even about having children. It was about having boys.
Yeah.
I
So-
remember
A
the
cheap
thing
labor,
that-
a cheap
I-
labor
Yeah.
force.
I remember in the Torah about the if you raped her, you need to marry her now. But I don't remember too much. I still have to look that up. I still haven't.
Yeah, look it up. I'm
Mm.
pretty sure that it's there. And I think that you had to, if you did rape her, you'd have to pay a certain. You had to
You
pay.
have to pay the dowry.
You had to pay the dowry. You can never divorce her, and
Yeah, it was a you break it, you bought it policy,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, exactly. Kira, I saw you wanted to say something.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Kai was saying because I could definitely relate to that. And yeah, you know, I would consider myself a pretty sexual person, but I would say I'm never comfortable talking about sex, if that makes sense. I've never been comfortable with it. And I remember someone telling me, you don't seem like, pretty much just telling me I seemed boring. And I was just like, okay, you know, but I know that I don't ever, I've never liked the term freak, you know, but it really took me going through therapy to understand that. Because like I said, I was molested. It was by a family member when I was 8, and it was in front of my little sister. And so, and it was kind of like a take me instead because my sister was asking him for something, and he said, well, you have to do something for it. And so growing up, my mom always told me if someone touches you, if someone does anything to you, you tell me. You tell me and I will always believe you. But that was because my mom was molested for 12 years when she was growing up. And then my grandmother was molested by her uncle and ended up, well, I don't know if it was rape because she had a baby and they took her baby. So they were always, if it happens to you, you tell me, you know. And so this was someone who I was told was my cousin. And we went back to his house. We lived in the country. He had some land and we were riding bikes and he happened to come out and he invited us in. And I remember, you know, my sister was asking him for stuff. And to this day, that's why I'm very big on not asking people for anything. I think that almost any time you ask someone, it comes at a price, whether you know it or not. You know, and so I had issues with my sister growing up for a long time, and I've always hated like people who beg, always. And I couldn't understand why until I went through therapy, and it was because my sister kept asking him for this, and he basically said, well, you can do something for it. And I remember my mom, I was the oldest. My mom said, you protect your sister and your brother. You do that at all costs. And so for me, you know, I was the big sister and we're riding bikes and I happen to get us in this situation. And this person who we think is, you know, consider our family is asking you to do something. We're 3 years apart. She was 5, you know, so I couldn't allow it to happen to her. But I didn't understand the resentment that I had for my sister growing up. I didn't understand my interest in sex at 8. I couldn't explain that to anybody. You know, I couldn't explain just my sexual exploration as I got older. I just knew if you called me a freak, we'd never speak again. But I didn't know that it came from, you know, me being molested as a child. So it just kind of makes me think about just the learned behavior that you have. I have 5 uncles. I had my dad in my life every day of my life, and we never had that issue. But I would hear how they talked about women, but I knew they would never let anybody touch me like that. So I'd never really kind of understood that dynamic, but I knew I had issues with sex and with expressing myself as it related to that because I knew where it stemmed from. I didn't tell a lot of people where it came from, especially after being able to pinpoint it in therapy. And it's like this, you weren't interested in sex before this happened to you and you were exposed to this. But just growing up, I knew I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't know how to express it. And I couldn't tell you where it came from.
So occurrences like this happening to people is the reason why it's imperative for the Me Too thing to happen. Because
Right.
you get to really find out how many women will say, I've been molested and I've been raped. And the magnitude of it is mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Just a second. It's really, it'll blow your mind to find out how many women have been molested and raped. So that's the imperativeness of the Me Too movement, right? So
But are we just focusing on
that's the thing
women?
that's the thing that I'm about to move to the line and beyond that. So now that thing right there, of the voice of someone like yourself, the voice of someone like Kai, or anyone that has had that happen to them, there's two ways. This is the question, is it being drowned out by this other stuff, or is that actually shining a deeper light on? Because like I was saying, like for Aziz Ansari, I'm speculating because I don't know anything about him, but I am almost willing to bet the fact that he comes from Indian, Pakistani, Middle Eastern cultures, right? That I am willing to bet that he comes from a culture. If you watch any kind of Indian, Pakistani, Middle Eastern soap operas, you see a lot of the girl hiding, running, like he comes and finds her, like it is the culture for a woman to put up the no thing. That's where he's coming from. Now I'm speculating on that. With the Russell Simmons thing, like we cannot deny that there was a rap culture that was all about misusing and abusing a woman, right? Like, and still is, right? So a culture that says like, that says that this isn't rape. Girl, just come here, 5 minutes. And if she does it, that's not rape, right? Just girl, come here. Just not, nobody will know, right? And her being pressured into that ain't right. And then you discard her and whatever. There's a whole culture stemming from that. So is this stuff coming out, is it casting a bad shadow on that? Or is that actually bringing that behavior to the light? Go ahead, Charles, and then we'll go back.
So just a quick point on the Aziz Ansari thing. I don't think it has anything to do with him being Middle Eastern. I think it has to do with him being a famous dude in LA, and a girl showed interest in him while she was on a date with another man. There was also an issue with, because there's part of that Babe article where she says that she did what she did because she didn't want Aziz Ansari to hate her. Now, look, he's an asshole for what he did. He's a straight up asshole. But that's not a cut and dry situation. That's what I'm saying. There's nuance to it. I'm not saying what he did was right. It definitely wasn't right. But there was a lot of clarity that could have been assessed there. Now, I'm not saying that it's her fault, but you teach people how to treat you.
I don't know if there's so much clarity, actually.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lack of clarity in that situation.
Yeah.
And I also, my impression of him is that he is not very skilled with ladies.
Yeah,
and it was asshole behavior.
Yeah.
But I think that
one woman would be like, he was sticking the tongue. I mean, he was sticking his fingers in her mouth.
Those are staged moves.
But
like
there are some women who would be like, I'm for that.
Some women are for that, and he learned that from somebody. I don't know if it's somebody he hired.
So that'd be like, oh, that sounds like a good time to me.
But it's So someone taught him that. It is a learned behavior, whether it is,
So one woman would like it, and another woman would think that that's a jerkish behavior.
But I think you don't know until you try, though.
Right.
That's the thing. You don't know anything until you try.
And he may not have had many people say no to him since becoming a star. He may not have been very skilled prior to people actually wanting to lay down with him.
I think
so. I mean, I'm not making excuses for him. I'm not saying that what happened was entirely consensual. But what I'm saying is, I can see his point of view where he feels he did nothing wrong.
Right.
That was his regular MO. That was his version of foreplay.
Right, because that's the protocol. The girl is supposed to act like she doesn't want to do that because then she'll look like she's a hoe.
Well, it's not even protocol though. It's not that she didn't act like she didn't want it. Right. She did it. That was the problem. Like,
the problem is you can't go down on somebody and then say, I really didn't want to. Like, I just don't open my mouth. Right. Unless you are physically holding my mouth.
Strange.
Well, the other thing is they were both naked in his apartment. Like, at what point are you so shy that somebody who doesn't, like, and this isn't because in season sorry is 5'6", he's 120
And
pounds.
he's little.
Like
It is a little too far-fetched. Like, he pointed at his junk, and so then I did this to him.
And she
That's
kept-
a
Some
little
men
bit
point at
She
their
far-fetched.
mentioned the
junk.
fingers, but that was before everything happened. So I was wondering if she described her outfit as a top and jeans. How did he get his fingers inside of you?
It was a tank top dress.
Oh, because
I
I
think
think
she said.
'cause I thought you said she sent
And
the
jeans.
yeah. It
But
was
he
a
pulled them
top.
off.
she was
and
wearing a
it-
dress and jeans.
Oh yeah, he unbuttoned her pants at one point.
Yeah, for the yeah. So she dressed in jeans and a top. So
Oh, yeah.
if you said it was so repetitive and he kept doing this, how is he shoving his hands down your pants? I'm assuming they fit. They didn't have to be tight or anything. But how is he continuously doing
See,
this?
this is the part that I actually relate to severely. I kind of know what it's like for someone to like go full throttle, and you're like, whoa, shorty, you know, like you're like, it's like you like them and you want to, but they're moving really, really fast,
And
it's-
they start turning you off. Because
Yes.
I've been in a situation where I find someone very attractive until they open their mouth or until they touch me in the wrong way. And once that happens, that's when your mind starts, look, I'm already in this situation. I mean, we've already, and then you feel bad. You feel bad for the man because you know that they have some things that are involuntarily happening to
Don't-
them. And
don't-
so,
Oh,
and then
you
they're
don't
gonna
feel-
call
you
you
don't
a
feel
tease.
bad
Then
for
they're
the-
gonna call you a
there's all
tease
these different things that
because
are
you
going
did
through
this
your
and
head.
yeah.
Like,
see, you got
But I want this to be clear because this
that's
is the
what's
thing.
going
This is
through
the
a
thing.
woman's mind.
I want us to examine the dynamic where the woman is supposed to be like, no, 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 and the man is supposed to press, because then this is what does happen. There's times, so that this is so strange. On one hand, it's almost like I'm in the door, like this ain't gonna happen, but prove to me you got what it takes for me to let it happen. There's that on this hand. Then equally on the other hand is that would be that wait, like, you know, you're being too pressureful. I really like don't want to do this. So now we have a huge conundrum. Go ahead.
Let me just go on the record and say you do not have to feel bad for the guy. The guy can break himself off afterwards. He'll be just fine. You do not have to feel bad about changing your mind, I think, so when I was reading the article, and let me go back for a second. So we, as individuals, we all have responsibility for our own safety. So if I go into a place where I'm going to have to, like, you know, fight 10 people to get out of that place, I have to understand that I put myself in that position. I didn't see the warning signs as I was going into that place. Okay, that does not mean that me getting jumped by and mugged by the 10 people excuses their actions at all. But I put myself in a precarious position. I wasn't mindful of my safety. I think that what I saw in that article is I saw a person who didn't feel comfortable setting boundaries, and I was just confused of how I guess wanting to say like, if you don't want to do it, then we should get to the point where we can cultivate that in our women, that it's okay for you to set that boundary and to walk away from it. And men, we should be able to accept that and understand that. And you should be okay with saying, I don't want you to touch me. You shouldn't have to, like, barter your way out of a situation. I have a friend, they would go to clubs, and I don't really like people that much, but we'll go with them. And the guys, you know, just kind of seeing how guys would act, you know, touching girls' butts and all this kind of stuff. And for me, that kind of made me want to get, like, you know, up in people's face. And the girls, they were saying, like, no, it's like, that's not how we handle things. We're going to flirt our way out of it. And in my mind, I'm like, what do you mean you flirt your way out of it? I don't understand that. But I think that it comes from, you know, men trying to, I guess, putting guilt, maybe their physical size or strength or whatever else, kind of making it maybe intimidating. But I mean, we need to figure out a way to cultivate the strength and the confidence to be able to say no and to establish those boundaries. And then if it means gouging out someone's eyes, then
Well, see,
that's extreme, I know, but I'm just saying.
I'll go this route. I was raised primarily by my mom in the house with my grandmother, and I have one older brother and I have 5 sisters, mostly younger. The one thing I always taught my sister, because my family is big on self-defense.
Mhm.
My
Good.
dad's a big gun dude, big into fighting, boxing. I've been boxing and doing wrestling and stuff like that since I was a kid. And when I was with my sister, the first thing I taught her how to do was to get somebody off of her. And I told her, at this point, you have a choice. You either keep hitting them and you keep on the ground, or you run. There's no in between. Because in that in between space, that's where he gets up and that's where he kicks your ass. And at that point, you're vulnerable. When I would go to clubs and I would see stuff like this, and honestly, when I would do stuff like that, because we get drunk, we go, we hang out, we talk to girls, we do whatever, and you would see that pressure being put on a girl. Now, every girl was different. Every girl reacts a different way, and it's something that I don't think ever gets addressed. Some girls like it. At some point, that works. It doesn't work all the time. It doesn't even work a lot.
Some girls like what part?
The pressure.
It's true. It's true.
Like, that's something that needs to be addressed.
It's not necessarily that they like it. It's that these were the rules. Like, these are the rules that have been.
Well, see, but that's the thing, Shayla. It's like, I've been in environments like that. Like, one of my best friends worked in the VIP of a sex club. Some girls like that.
No, he's right.
And it's not to shame them, and it's not to excuse any man from doing it. But we need to realize the complexity of sexual interaction between people.
We need to realize
And
the
we need
interaction period.
That's so true. So, like, is all this stuff going to take away from the good old fashioned grab you by your hair and rip your? See what I'm saying? Like the good old fashioned.
the thing about that is,
you rip your clothes off.
is that
like,
we
there's
need
no place for
we
that?
need to get to a spot. We need to get to a place
That's terrible.
where somebody says that that's what they're into, or they give you an indication that that's what they're into.
Yeah.
Going back to just being truthful
Yes.
about what it is
Yes,
you want,
and that's the thing. It's
setting
like,
boundaries.
The only thing I ever ask you to do is forgive me the ask. Forgive me the ask. Like, if I walk up to you and I don't know, and I'm like, you know what, you're really attractive, and I would love to have sex with you right now.
I would too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and
Awkward.
but see, like, if I say that, if I come up to a girl and I say that, and now she could be like,
girlfriend,
she could be
apologize
like,
to the camera.
I'm
she could be
wrong.
like, ugh, that's nasty. No.
Or
Oh, okay,
she
I'm
could be
sorry.
in
I
agreement.
apologize for, whatever.
Yeah, but what if she's supposed to, like, everything is
But see,
been
that's the
told
thing,
her,
though, is you're
she's supposed to
saying
say, "Ew, that's nasty."
Supposed to. There is no supposed
There is no
to.
supposed to. Either
But
you do or you
I
With
had-
people.
I have this conversation. Well, we probably only had it maybe once or twice. Ashton, my boyfriend. He's Scorpio, real laid back. He hates. I never see him engage the way he will engage in a conversation when a woman says he can't handle me. That's his thing. He's like, why the fuck do I have to try and handle you as a woman? If I have to reel in somebody, and not just in a sexual way, just talking about, women who like more aggressive men. He's way laid back. He's not forceful, nothing like that. So growing up, women would say that, oh, you can't handle me. And he's like, why the hell do I have to handle you? Why do I have to try to corral you? You're not an animal, So I think that just kind of speaks to, before we even get to the sex, in how some people respond maybe to aggression as opposed to... and so when he would talk about that, I got it, but I never really heard anybody say that before him. And just all my friends, they like the thugs, and they just like, oh yeah, girl, I liked him, but he too soft, and he too weak, or he can't do this. And so I think we should go back to allowing people to have, I think it should go back to men. I think men dictate what's okay in society. And I think it's more of us. So I think at times we don't allow men to recognize their full range of emotions. We won't acknowledge them. And I think that rape is not just a thing about women. I've known too many men who have been taken advantage of by older women, their babysitters when they were young.
Yep.
Wow,
And we,
Charles,
you
yeah.
know, and talking to, my homeboys, oh, I lost my virginity at 10. At 10?
To a 14 or 15 year
I,
old.
I lost my
Or
virginity,
20
or
at
20
12, like to my sitter. I'm like, how did, and it's almost like it's a trophy for them. But if that were to happen to us, we'd be whores. But they don't understand
interesting.
how.
But take it deeper than that, Kiera. Take it deeper than that and think about what it took to get that abusive woman to that point. Because abused people abuse people.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's deeper than any of us pointing blame. We are abusing each other in
That's
society as a whole. We are abusing each
Charles,
other
like we're all
in our
we're all in
interpersonal
general.
relationships.
I agree.
And it's continuing this cycle.
And when
Let me
we
And
tell
not
you
all
about
of
the
us are
Middle
going to
Eastern
have
culture.
access to therapy.
The Middle Eastern culture,
So,
my friends, like
how do we deal?
so my mom's culture and beyond, like if the woman enjoys sex, you married a prostitute. That's like how their culture is.
Okay.
Like if your wife is enjoying it, she's not supposed to enjoy it. She's there to do her duty. And if she is enjoying it, like that's the culture that they come from. She's not supposed to enjoy it.
But that's not just Middle Eastern culture. I mean, America was founded on puritanical beliefs. They're just the same way. That's
So,
fundamentalism.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like that.
That's
in,
freaking
it's
huge.
like that in most cultures that
Yeah.
I've seen, except for probably Thai culture.
Yeah,
But look, I
I
want to
mean-
flip it. I want to show y'all the contrast, right? So then here's the other contrast. Me, I'm shy. Like y'all wouldn't tell because I do TV and I do spoken word. There's certain areas I'm super shy in. When it comes to one-on-one intimate, I can be very, very shy, right? So if I'm shy and he's shy, ain't nothing gonna pop off. Like you can forget it, right? But if he's too aggressive, now you done scared me, and now whatever. There has to be like this perfect point of precise, not too aggressive, where it's like, I don't like this, and also not too shy. Like if you're shy and I'm shy, we're just gonna be sitting here. But it's enough aggression to feel that captive, like, okay, this is worth it. I like the way this feels. Like so. Here are all these different things. It has to, for me, it has to be a certain amount of aggressiveness because I do like that animalistic vibration type thing. I'm being honest, but if it's too aggressive, then you frighten me.
I think men we don't really learn how to. We have like maybe two speeds, like no,
On,
stop,
off.
on and off, yeah. So we don't know how to like, and I'm a man, so I'm in here with us. But I guess we don't know how to determine those more nuanced things. Like maybe
I agree. How many times do y'all not get hints? And we keep hinting,
right?
thinking
Exactly.
y'all are gonna get
We're like
Problem is dudes
oblivious.
don't get hints.
Right.
It-
We're
Yeah.
oblivious,
Yeah.
and it's like we see like what we're trying to accomplish.
It's our fault for hinting.
But no, we need to
shouldn't
up.
hint. We should be
Well,
very.
see,
No, but we need to up our language.
But go
So
ahead.
That's the
Let him finish the thought out, and then Charles, no, it's my fault. Everybody was interrupting him.
we need to, as men, we need to up. We can't show certain emotions. We can't feel certain things. We have to be, a certain way, and we need to up our language. We need to up our language skills. So, just because she doesn't want to have sex with you today doesn't mean that she doesn't like you. You don't have to like force that. And are you like reading your partner? Are you I don't know. Are you reading them? Do you know what they're really trying to say? Maybe you should ask openly, like what you were saying earlier. It's like, I don't know. We need to up our language.
Yeah, honesty is the best policy.
Yeah. I agree. I would just say, just from my encounters in therapy, which, like you said, not a lot of people have access to, which is why I think I'm so quickly cognizant of it when other people have issues like that. But I'm very, very big on my boundaries. And it's almost to a point to where with anybody in any situation, male, female, it doesn't have to be sexual
got
at
your
all.
finger on
I'm
my boundary.
I'm like, this is how I am. So if after that I respond, however, I warned you that these were my boundaries. And yeah, I think that goes both ways. That we have, as women, we have to learn and be comfortable in being more vocal. And that's why I said, for me, I wasn't vocal in my situation. And so it was always like, you got yourself in this situation,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Wow.
I always look to encourage other people to be vocal and recognize the signs before. But just brief example. Actually, after our meeting of the minds, the community conversations at Six Square, we were cleaning up, and it ended up being around like 11 or 12 when we finished. There was a man who pulled up in an Infiniti truck, and when I was outside talking to a lady who was there, and he said he was a manager at Stubbs. It's right around the corner from Six Square. And he said that he lived in Temple and he forgot his wallet back home. And he said, could I borrow a couple of dollars? I work at Stubbs. You can come tomorrow. I'll get you ladies lunch. So he was talking to myself and the other woman. And he said, I'll get you ladies lunch. Y'all can come by tomorrow, or I can bring the money here, because we were at the office right outside. So at the time, the lady had her son, and we had been talking for so long, her son had went and gotten a car. And so when he asked that, she said, oh, well, we just kind of parted ways. So she said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and go. But she was just looking at him. I said, I had to go to the ATM anyway. I said, I can give you a couple dollars. And so I'm standing outside of Six Square. There's that corner store straight ahead. Yes. And so I just drove my car over, and I told him, I said, you can wait here. I'll just go to the ATM. So the lady was still there in her car, and I drove to the corner store, and it was right around midnight. So he was walking out, like the owner. And I asked him if I could get some money out the ATM. And he said, yeah, so I went to the ATM. And so I took out $40. And I was like, I'm not going to give him a 20. So I asked him if I said, can I break this? And he was like, no, ma'am, I got to go. So I said, okay, so I get back in my car, and the guy is locking up. And so I'm looking, I'm like, I got the $40. I don't want him to follow me anywhere. So then I lean over in my glove compartment. So I'm looking in my glove compartment. I was like, maybe I have a few dollars here. I usually just throw my dollars in there. And so when I'm rummaging through my things, and then when I sit back up, the man is standing right next to, outside my window. And I was like, oh, shit, hey. I was like, I was like, here's the money. I'm sorry. I said, I thought I had some change, but you can go ahead and get this 20. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, I really appreciate it. Do you want to follow me to get some change? I was like, no, it's no biggie or anything. And so he was like, okay. So when he had the money in his hand, and then he went and put the money in his back pocket. When he reached back, he was a big guy. His shirt lifted, and his penis was out. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? And so when I was like, I didn't want to let off anything and let him know that I noticed, but I was just like, okay, so I'm like, okay, just remain calm, think yourself out of this. You got this, you got this. So the guy, this was literally after our meeting, this guy is standing there, and he's like, oh, okay. He's like, do you mind if I smoke? And I'm like, no, I don't mind, but I'm just in my mind trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of this. Y'all, this man pulled out a damn crack pipe and hit this crack pipe right next to my window. And I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, and it just didn't make sense. I'm like, this guy is in an Infiniti truck with his dick out, hitting a crack pipe. I'm like, I couldn't put it together. I couldn't make sense of it.
DMX had an Infiniti.
And so, but
hold on
no,
1 second.
the guy, like, he then basically said, "Oh, well, just get out of the car, give me a hug." And I was like, "No, it's fine,
What in
it's
the
fine."
world?
I was like, "It's fine, you can keep the money, I don't need
You're
it."
about to
So
make
at
him
this
break the
point,
table over
he
here.
asked me for my number, and I was just like, I'm looking at my phone. My phone is sitting in my lap, so I'm like, okay. So I wrote it down on a napkin, gave the guy my number, and so then he's like, "Just give me a hug. Just get out the car and give me a hug." I said,
Did you give him a real number?
yeah, I gave him a real number because I didn't know if he was going to call it because my phone was sitting in my
so
lap.
this is perfect.
So
oh
then
my
when
God.
I was back, when I said, okay, I'm just gonna go. I turned on my car, went to put my car in reverse, and his whole demeanor changed. He said, "Bitch, don't hit my car." And I was like, wait, what? I looked back and
Oh
this guy
my
had me
God.
blocked in.
Oh my
And
God.
so
I'm seeing my heart rate
I
is
didn't
increasing.
know what to do, and I'm like I didn't know what to do, and so he was like, "So can I have a hug?" I said, "Yeah, you can have a hug," and so at this time, like, my eyes are watery. He leans in. I told him I wasn't going to get out of the car. I actually had on this cardigan. And so he leaned in. And when he leaned in, y'all, he licked my fucking face. He licked my face. And I just started crying. And I just backed up and I hit his car trying to leave. Like, he was trying
Oh
to
my
pull
God.
my cardigan, trying to leave. So then there was the woman who was there actually had parked further down. She said she had a bad feeling about it. She called 911.
Oh my
She called
God.
911 and they would not send a car out. They said that the police, when she described me as a black woman,
Yeah.
they put her on hold. And then they said that the police station that was on 11th Street, actually, yeah, it's on 8th Street. I was on 11th Street. They said that the police station was not dispatching any cars. And so she did, like, nothing happened. I just drove home crying and everything. The very next day, she showed up at my job and told me to fill out a police report. She said, "I was worried about you the whole night. I kept thinking about you."
Thank
But
God for good people
what
like
pissed
that.
me off is I went and filled out a police report, and that's a whole other story and how they treated me with that. But when I did it, I had to participate in a lineup and point him out and everything. At first, they said that he was opportunistic and that he just tried it with me. But then there was another police report, same description, everything. So that's when they called me in for a lineup. So then they, found him, did a background check. He had actually had a public exposure before, and he also had a rape, but it was dismissed. But the issue was that, they say the case is closed. He's been arrested, everything. I would say probably 2 or 3 months later, they called me and they said it was a private investigator who was hired by his attorney who had been following me, had no idea, called me and said, "I just wanted to ask you, why did you give him your number?" So I'm thinking all of this shit is over. And then they asked me, "Well, he said that you were complacent, so we might have to take this to trial. We thought it was over, but we might have to take this to trial because he said that you were interested in him because you gave him his number," and he gave them the number that I had written down.
Okay, so stop there because there's things that need to be highlighted when you're going. Like, I'm like, wow, like, it's so imperative that you brought this part of it up, because this is the problem that's happening with the whole Aziz Ansari thing, is that you have people who are seeing it like this, like literally where they're saying, it's basically like, you see how you felt pressured to give your phone number?
Yeah.
You see how you felt pressured to give the hug? You felt pressured. So there's so many people, everybody's saying, like, what did Aziz do? What did Aziz do? And they can't really, assent to it. But then when you're telling your story, we see evidence of women doing things that's not comfortable. On Facebook, there is a experiment that they do. Okay, there's an experiment that they do that they like, they give guys this terrible Kool-Aid that tastes awful. No, it's lemonade. And the guys go, "Yuck, this is gross. This is disgusting. I don't want no more of that." And all the women are like, "Oh yeah, it's good. It's good. It tastes great. Maybe you could just..." So we women, the guys are like, "Yuck, stop it. I don't like it." And then for some reason or the other, bend ourselves in peculiar poses to like, I don't know, like
Accommodate people.
But my guard
accommodate.
was down. If you think about it, the conversation that we had that day was talking about being a person of color and protecting East Austin. So how am I saying that, that black people aren't everybody, we're not scary, and that if we're trying to now blend these communities in East Austin with the black community as well as the new people who are coming in, that was essentially what our conversation was about. And so for me, I'm looking at it and my guard was down. I'm like, this man approaches me in a nice car and he's in a bind. Am I afraid because he's a black guy? Or am I afraid because this is an uncomfortable situation? And so in us listening and dealing with all that heavy stuff earlier, I'm like, he just needs a couple dollars for gas. So it slowly kind of morphed into.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to.
We're pausing real quick the segment because my sister has to go pick up her daughters, and that's so important to me. So go ahead, Kai. I love you.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Huh?
My director has to
Oh
go
wait, can you sit for 2 seconds? I'm gonna close out the show. No, you can't. Okay, you gotta pick them up.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. And he has to go too. I'm just gonna close it out real quick. Kai had to step away for a moment, and we're restarting up the show right now. She has to go pick up her daughters, and we literally have 3 minutes till the show closes. And it's awful because you brought up something that is so imperative that happens to so many women. I'm gonna let Damon kind of close out that. It's like we got to this point where we could go off a whole nother hour off of what you said. So I have a feeling Damon is gonna package it up for us. So closing remarks, Damon.
Well, just thinking like in a self-defense situation, and it goes back to women feeling empowered to establish boundaries and being able to enforce those boundaries. And I just want to say, like, when you were telling me your story, like it's probably very visible on the camera, like the reactions, like every time you were telling me something, I'm like, it's 12 o'clock at night, a guy asking you for dollars, it's a lot of things were kind of like going, like, were like firing for me. I want to know, like, one, what we can do to help foster the building of that. Like, what can we do to, I don't want to say make women feel empowered so that they can establish and enforce boundaries, but what do we do to, like, I want to see what can we do to change that paradigm. Because, like, I have 3 daughters, and like I don't want to ever imagine them being in a position where they have to feel that way. So it really is like, what can we do if it, I don't know.
And it breaks my heart that anything would say that, like, it breaks my heart that like, I don't want you to feel any kind of guilt and shame for taking the actions that you did by giving your number or anything, because, like, you don't know if he's going to try. Some dudes try to call right then and there, literally.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, if it's already in this tense situation, what happens if he calls my phone and it's not, or tries to call my phone and it's not the right number? He stood by my door because I kept telling him I wanted to leave.
And then people are going to make you feel a certain way about that. And that happens to so many women.
So one thing I wanted to say earlier when we were talking about the Me Too movement, I think it's good that it's drawing attention to what's happening, and I don't know if this is actually happening, but what I think that would be more beneficial is that if we are changing the way the legal system works, so that when someone is getting a call, dispatch is getting a call, or the way that rape is reported, that we're taking it serious and we're following it up and we're making sure that that it is like zero tolerance. Like, if we're supporting this with a hashtag, but as a society, are our laws and our law enforcement and people of authority, are they taking it serious? And are the people that don't have the voice to the platform to be a celebrity, are they getting a chance to get justice or get a cathartic release by having this person, whatever the case may be?
That's very good. And it's so hard we're out of time, to close on such a topic that we're just cracking the surface, and we just touched on some things. But that's amazing what he said. We're going to close right there. To convict someone of rape is one of the hardest things to do. Like, it is very, very difficult to get somebody charged with rape because of reasons of what they're trying to do to you, by coming up with, well, didn't you? And that's a terrible, terrible, terrible. I don't know. I think that we are on a path that's going to change some things. Like you said, we're evolving, and we are evolving in our interactions with one another. I am so sorry that happened to you, but I am so thankful that you're willing to share those experiences so that they can be examined and look at, because it reveals so much, about how we interact with someone who goes through that, and what we're doing to make sure that those things don't happen as well. So thank you so much for being with us today, Kiera, and sharing with us. So.
I'm sure. I just hope that it helps someone else. I just hope that, you just, if possible, you try and just be more cognizant. You recognize the warning signs and things like that, because I'm just like, do I keep getting myself in this position? But I was an Army brat where I moved around all the time. I didn't know anybody ever. So I had to get really comfortable in approaching people and meeting people and fostering relationships, not knowing these people, from the next person. So I think that really had a lot to play in it. But just being a woman, there are some pressures that we do feel. And so I do believe that as women, we have to be almost on guard.
And to our gentlemen, thank you so much too. The guys were really difficult to talk about this. They didn't really want to. They didn't want to get. But you guys walked in truth, so much truth, while being sensitive to the matter as well. And I thank you for your courage on being able to talk about this stuff with us as well. And of course, Kai was with us, and she's always a blessing. So. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Intellectually engaging to think outside the lines, with conversation about the nation that never leaves you blind. Take a listen and pay attention. Here is where you find the educational, sensational meeting of the minds. Yeah, it's the meeting of the minds. Meeting of the minds.